What if the substance most athletes assume is banned for performance reasons isn't actually on the banned list at all? Hi guys, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Mahdi. Every week we explore fitness, psychology, discipline, mindset, and the real science behind performance. Today we're answering a question I get asked constantly. Can alcohol and drugs actually be used as doping? Can they genuinely enhance athletic performance? The answer is far more surprising than most people expect, and understanding it teaches you something deeper about how performance actually works at the level of your nervous system, your hormones, and the gap between how strong you feel and how strong you actually are. Let's get into it. First, let's clear up a major misconception because almost everyone gets this wrong. Most people assume the World Anti-Doping Agency bans every substance that could conceivably affect performance. That's not how it works at all. WADA uses a strict three-part scientific assessment for every substance that gets considered for the prohibited list. A substance gets banned only if it meets at least two of three specific criteria. It demonstrably enhances performance, it poses a genuine health risk to the athlete, or it violates what's called the spirit of sport, meaning it undermines fairness and integrity in competition. Here's the surprising part, and it's a fact that catches almost everyone off guard. As of January 2018, alcohol was officially and completely removed from the prohibited list, not because drinking became safer for athletes, because after extensive scientific review by international experts, the evidence simply didn't support alcohol as a genuine performance enhancer in the vast majority of competitive sports. That single fact tells you something important about how this entire system actually works. The common assumption that if a substance affects your brain or your body in a noticeable way, it must help athletic performance is simply wrong. Affecting how you feel and improving what you can actually do are two completely different things, but that's only part of the story. Understanding why requires looking at what the actual peer-reviewed research shows. A comprehensive scientific review published in the journal Sports Medicine took on an ambitious task, examining every single substance class on WADA's entire prohibited list, searching specifically for genuine, randomized controlled trial evidence of real performance enhancement in trained athletes, not just theoretical mechanisms or anecdotal claims. The findings were genuinely striking, and they reshape how you should think about doping entirely. Out of 23 total substance classes on the list, only 5 showed convincing, well-documented evidence of actually enhancing performance in trained athletes. These were anabolic agents, beta-2 agonists, certain stimulants, glucocorticoids, and beta blockers. And that last one specifically applies to accuracy-based sports like archery and shooting, not general athletic performance. For 11 of the remaining substance classes, researchers found there simply wasn't enough quality, well-designed research available to draw firm conclusions either way. Not proof of enhancement, not proof of no effect, just an absence of solid data. And for 6 classes, the existing evidence actually demonstrated an absence of meaningful performance benefit when properly tested under controlled conditions. This means a substantial portion of what most people assume is genuine doping exists on the prohibited list, primarily because of health risk or fairness concerns, not because rigorous science has proven these substances make athletes measurably faster, stronger, or better at their sport. So where does this leave alcohol and recreational drugs specifically? Let's go substance by substance, because the underlying physiological mechanisms are genuinely different from one another, and understanding each one individually is where this gets really interesting. Let's start with alcohol, because it's the substance most people have direct personal experience with. Ethanol acts primarily as a central nervous system depressant. Its main mechanism involves potentiating GABA receptor activity throughout the brain, GABA being your nervous system's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. This is precisely why alcohol produces the familiar effects of relaxation, reduced social inhibition, and progressively impaired motor coordination as consumption increases. For any sport requiring fast reaction time, precise coordination, dynamic balance, or sustained cardiovascular output, which describes the overwhelming majority of competitive sports, Alcohol's depressant effects work directly and measurably against performance. Reaction time slows in a dose-dependent way. Fine motor control deteriorates noticeably. Hand-eye coordination suffers, and this impairment has been shown in research to persist for hours after consumption, well past the point where someone might subjectively feel back to normal, partly due to residual neurological effects and partly due to the sleep disruption alcohol reliably causes even at moderate doses. The one narrow historical exception that researchers and sports physicians have discussed relates to sports requiring fine control of hand tremor under intense pressure, historically precision shooting sports specifically. Alcohol's mild tranquilizing effect was theorized decades ago to potentially steady hand tremor in these very specific circumstances. This is actually precisely why beta blockers, a completely different class of medication that produces a similar tremor steadying effect through a far more reliable and predictable pharmacological mechanism by blocking adrenaline's effect on the heart and nervous system, remain specifically banned in precision sports like archery and shooting today, even though they're permitted or even medically necessary in most other competitive contexts. Alcohol's effect in this narrow application is inconsistent, unpredictable between individuals, and vastly outweighed by its much broader and more reliable impairment of coordination, judgment, and reaction time. Now let's talk about stimulants, substances like cocaine and amphetamine-type compounds. This is genuinely where the picture shifts, and understanding why is important. Stimulants work by increasing central nervous system arousal, primarily through elevating dopamine, norepinephrine, and serotonin activity throughout the brain and body. This can produce measurable short-term increases in alertness, a reduced subjective perception of fatigue, and increased heart rate along with heightened aggression and competitive drive. This is precisely why stimulants as a broad category represent one of the 5 substance classes with genuine documented evidence of performance enhancement. But here's the critical nuance the research reveals. This evidence applies mainly to short-duration efforts, strength-based tasks, or sprint-based athletic performance. No controlled, well-designed study has demonstrated a reliable performance benefit from stimulant use in endurance-based athletic events. The mechanisms that help in an explosive 10-second sprint don't translate to sustained performance over 30 minutes or 2 hours. And here's what's almost always left out of casual conversations about this topic. The exact same neurological mechanism that produces that short-term arousal and confidence also significantly impairs judgment, increases injury risk dramatically by reducing the athlete's perception of pain and physical warning signals, and creates serious cardiovascular strain precisely during the moments of intense physical exertion when the heart is already under maximum load. This is the spirit of sport principle in direct action. These substances meet the bar for could theoretically provide an advantage in narrow, specific circumstances, while simultaneously meeting the bar for creates genuine, serious danger to the athlete's health. Both criteria satisfied, which is exactly why they remain firmly prohibited. What about cannabis and THC specifically, since this comes up constantly in these conversations? The evidence here is actually the opposite of what many people assume going in. Multiple controlled studies examining THC's effects have found no reliable evidence that it enhances athletic performance in any meaningful way. If anything, the research consistently shows it impairs reaction time, coordination, and short-term cognitive processing, all factors that work directly against performance in virtually every competitive sport, from team sports requiring split-second decisions to individual sports requiring sustained focus. THC remains on the prohibited list, but the research consistently and clearly shows this classification is driven primarily by the spirit of sport criterion and broader health considerations, rather than any genuine demonstrated performance advantage in competition. Understanding all of this together reveals a deeper principle, and this is genuinely the most important part of today's video. True, evidence-backed performance enhancement, according to the actual peer-reviewed research, comes overwhelmingly from substances that directly target the specific physiological systems involved in muscle protein synthesis, oxygen delivery and red blood cell production, and accelerated tissue recovery. anabolic agents that mimic testosterone's direct effect on muscle tissue, agents that increase the blood's oxygen carrying capacity for endurance events, hormones that measurably accelerate the body's natural recovery and repair processes. Recreational substances like alcohol and most illicit drugs were never designed to do any of this, and the biochemistry simply doesn't support it. Their primary effects operate on the brain's reward and arousal systems, which can absolutely create a powerful subjective feeling of enhanced performance, increased confidence, a reduced perception of effort, heightened aggression and drive, without the underlying physiological capacity of the muscles, the cardiovascular system, or the joints actually improving, and frequently, while that underlying capacity is measurably declining in real time, even as the subjective experience says otherwise. This is an important and somewhat sobering distinction within sports psychology specifically. Perceived performance and actual measurable performance are genuinely not the same thing, and the gap between those two things is exactly where these substances do the most damage. An athlete who subjectively feels invincible, fast, and powerful, while their actual coordination, judgment, and cardiovascular safety margins are quietly deteriorating beneath the surface, is in a genuinely dangerous position, for themselves directly and frequently for teammates or competitors around them in contact or high-speed sports. So let's bring everything together with what the science actually clearly supports. First, alcohol is not a genuine performance enhancer for the overwhelming majority of athletic contexts and competitive sports. The depressant effects on coordination, reaction time, and post-exercise recovery work directly and measurably against performance, which is precisely why it was formally removed from anti-doping consideration in 2018 rather than ever being added to it in the first place. Second, most recreational drugs that do show some short-term arousal or stimulant effects come paired with proportionally severe health and safety costs that the research clearly and consistently documents, which is exactly why they remain firmly prohibited despite genuinely inconsistent and narrow performance evidence. Third, genuine evidence-backed performance enhancement is concentrated in a relatively small number of substance classes that work through direct, measurable physiological mechanisms on muscle, blood, and hormones, not primarily through psychoactive effects on mood, confidence, or perceived energy. Fourth, and this is the part I most want you to take away from this video, the actual foundation of elite athletic performance, supported by decades of accumulated sports science research across every discipline, remains progressive structured training, genuine recovery practices, consistent nutrition, and adequate sleep. These four pillars remain, by an enormous and consistent margin, the most powerful and reliable performance levers available to any athlete at any level of competition, from weekend recreational training to Olympic competition. If you're training seriously and genuinely looking to improve your performance, the evidence consistently and repeatedly points back to these fundamentals, not to shortcuts that carry real, well-documented physiological cost and risk. Understanding the real science here protects you from two separate but equally important things: believing persistent myths about what actually enhances athletic performance, and dangerously underestimating the genuine health risks that come with substances people sometimes turn to without fully understanding the complete picture of what's actually happening in their body. If you found this useful, let me know in the comments. Was there a specific finding here that genuinely surprised you? And if this is the kind of content that helps you train smarter and think more clearly about your own performance, subscribe, because we go this deep into the real science every single week. See you in the next one.